the world, too.
Before we go on, and Mr. Lewis, I want to give you the opportunity to... Excuse me, none of us are going to be heard if we don't speak one at a time. I want to give you the chance to respond, Mr. Lewis, but before I do, I guess I want to go further with the answer to the question that you gave me about the Unification Church. Why would you consider it to be a cult?
I want to say at this point that I'm much more worried about a lot of other groups than the Unification Church.
But yet you said that it did fall into that classification.
Well, I believe that the Unification Church, and from many hundreds of people I've spoken to, including Mr. Hassan, who's a former member, you might want to ask him his really much more personal experience.
Yes, and you will. 2.5 years.
Abuse their members. The Unification Church particularly is guilty of not saying who they are when they recruit. Often a person may go to a camp for several weeks, go to a recruitment center without knowing what the name of the group is, or that even that it is a religion. They have many friend groups, political groups, social action groups. I have heard many, many stories of people being deprived of food, being deprived of sleep, in order to get themselves into a position of having their personalities altered. I have heard many, many cases of not being able to see parents. I think they're improving a little bit about this cutting of family ties. Now that there are children in the group, I've heard very disturbing stories about how the children are treated, how they are not allowed to see their parents often.
I have to interrupt
yes,
here.
go ahead.
You must let me interrupt at that
Yes,
one.
your chance to respond.
I think, first of all, many of these things are very personal. For instance, Marcia Rudin, as a Jewish person, might feel that Jews for Jesus, who are at least as evangelical-minded as we are, at least as passionately devoted to Jesus as we are to our mission, are out there on campuses trying to convert Jewish people to Christianity. She might say they're using very powerful techniques, they're teaching, they're speaking out their cult. An evangelical fundamentalist, on the other hand, who might not like the Unification Church, say Jews for Jesus is fine, they're just using normal Christian means of gaining proselytes, of gaining conversion. Now, if you went to a monastery and you saw people who were living in a monastic cell, who'd given up, were living the vows of poverty, chastity, obedience to their superior, if you believe in God, believe in Christ, believe in Christianity, you might say, what a fabulous person you are. What an amazing person. What an amazing dedication you have to lead this religious life. If you, on the other hand, did not believe in God, you did not believe in Christ, you might think, what a crazy person you are. In fact, St. Francis of Assisi, who wanted to live a monastic life, his parents tried to take out a conservatorship on him. They didn't feel that his commitment, his dedication, his going beyond the norm of the society was a good thing.
And I think it's a very personal... said about the Unification Church. And, I mean, when a person enters a monastery, they know that they are entering a monastery.
That's exactly correct.
And one of the things that Ms. Rudin brought up was the fact that she felt that many people find themselves in the Unification Church without even realizing that they are becoming involved in a religion, that it's a political group or a social kind of group.
And it's
well, I would be the first person to admit that we've made a few mistakes. We've made many mistakes. It's a very young church. Reverend Moon came here 10 years ago. It's difficult to realize the church has only been in America for 10 years, although you think there's millions of us everywhere, so much attention is paid to us. For 10 years, it's a very young church. A lot of mistakes have been made. We're certainly paying for some of those mistakes. But I do feel that Marcia's experience there are just a few examples that are blown up to condemn a movement that is a very honest, a very sincere movement.
I think we should ask Mr. Hassan. He's the one with the experience. I have not had a few experiences. I've not heard of a few experiences. I've heard of hundreds of experiences from these groups. And it's not a question of looking at it from the inside, yes, you're a wonderful religious person. I am looking at the behavior of these groups towards their members, and we have found a considerable amount of abuse. Mr. Hassan? Authoritarianism.
I just want to make a couple of comments. I spent 2.5 years in the Moon organization. I was assistant director of 2 New York centers. I met with Moon personally over 25 times. And the deception that's employed is not done by lower-ranking members. It comes right from the top. In fact, there were 2 speeches that were printed that he gave in 1972 where he said lying is okay if you do it for God, if you do it to help a person. In terms of himself, he views himself as greater than any other person that's ever lived in history, and in fact has plans to take over the world. I was with him in a leadership meeting in 1974, September, where he said when we took power in America, we would have to amend the Constitution and make it a capital offense for people to have sexual relations with people other than those assigned to them. And went on to justify how fornication was the greatest sin in God's eyes, and we'd be doing these people a favor by killing them and putting them in the spirit world.
That doesn't sound very different from Ayatollah Khomeini or from Jesus Christ.
I think it sounds very similar to Khomeini, but not to Jesus Christ.
To Jesus Christ and to a whole... the sense that Christianity would conquer the world, the fact that so many followers would be filled with such passion, with such dedication, that they would give up their lives, they would martyr themselves in the name of the religion, they would kill themselves if necessary.
Martyring is different than going into Rome and usurping Caesar and taking
I think you're missing my
control.
point. What I'm trying to say is that we mustn't lose an historical perspective. I do not speak for any church. I am not a member of any organized church. I do not in any sense represent the Unification Church.
Christianity if you think
let me speak. I was raised as a Christian and I'm rather familiar with it. But let me indicate that the problem here is that the government must not be given the power to decide what is a good religion, what is a bad religion,
agree.
what is a good belief, what is a bad belief.
I agree.
We must be very careful, particularly when we consider the historical origins of this country and the importance of the First Amendment to our spiritual and intellectual development.
I agree,
If that's true,
but we
if
can't
that's true,
allow
then the test-
freedom of religion to
All right,
usurp
but that
freedom of
test-
mind
that
and freedom
test-
of
then
thinking.
the only test must be criminal conduct. If there
I
are
agree.
groups that engage in criminal conduct,
You seem to be in
religion cannot be a
agreement
shield.
This is my point. We're not against groups such as Unification Church because of their ideas. We are against them because of their behavior. And we believe that there is an awful lot of law breaking going on, but not just the Unification Church, but by many, many other groups, much more serious law breaking. I've never heard of Unification Church beating children to death, and there are many other groups who do this. We are interested in groups who break the laws and abuse their members. We are not interested in quashing theologies. We are not interested in having the government decide who is a religion, who isn't a religion. I, as a Jew, Mr. Hassan's a Jew, we are particularly not interested in this because our own religion has been subject to this. We are interested in applying the country's laws equally across the board to everyone, whether or not they are a religious leader or not.
That's right.
If it involves getting a few rabbis and priests and Protestant ministers, also fine. They should be
the same laws that protect people from buying a car that doesn't have a motor in it should be applied in terms of people who are approached by groups that they have no idea what is behind them and what is going to happen to them when they get lured away to some isolated retreat that's 200 miles from the nearest city.
I think Marcia is making a very good point that if people break the law, they should pay for that. And I would say the Unification Church has been investigated by every single government agency, at least 2, if not 3 times. The FBI, the CIA, the IRS, many, many times they've come to us trying to find some wrongdoing. And I feel that one of the reasons why we've been investigated so many times, because there is a tremendous amount of bigotry that is created by people speaking false things about the churches. I myself have found that when people actually come to our church, they have this feeling that we're some sort of Jim Jones satanic cult, people wandering around mindless. People actually come, read the newspapers, read the New York Times, read the Washington Post, they actually walk in and say, wow, this is not what I expected at all. You're all normal people.